Chapter 32. Jiang Yunshan was originally not called Jiang Yunshan. When she woke up and found herself lying in an antique room, she was very excited. Transmigration, this was a word that was used too much in her world. She never thought that it would happen to her one day. Looking at the luxurious and elegant decorations in the room, the well-dressed maids respectfully called her Second Miss. Every day, she only needed to admire flowers and listen to music while waiting for people to serve her. She felt that there was nothing better in life than this. However, a person's desire could never be satisfied. After receiving Jiang Yunshan's memories, she found that the original body's noble identity and luxurious life was just a laughable perception. Jiang Yunshan was only a concubine's daughter. Above her, there was an older sister who was better than her in terms of background, appearance, and talent. Jiang Lingzhen. Jiang Yunshan began to pay attention to Jiang Lingzhen. After seeing Jiang Lingzhen's life, she knew that her high-quality life was just a joke in other people's eyes. What Jiang Lingzhen was wearing was a tribute from the palace. What Jiang Lingzhen ate every day was personally made by the eldest princess who spent a lot of money to invite the best chef from Jiangnan. Jiang Lingzhen liked bamboo. The general's mansion's backyard specially opened up a bamboo forest so that she could occasionally sit there when she was free. Jiang Lingzhen's childhood sweetheart was the current crown prince. The more information she received, the more unbalanced Jiang Yunshan's heart became. Based on what? She was the one who transmigrated. She should be the true proud daughter of heaven. Jiang Lingzhen was just a native. Based on what could she be compared to dust? This unwillingness, after seeing Jiang Lingzhen in person, reached its peak. In Jiang Yunshan's memories, Jiang Lingzhen's impression was not very deep. After all, the original body was as timid as a mouse. How could she dare to get close to such a dazzling older sister? She only knew that Jiang Lingzhen was a very beautiful woman. But no matter how she imagined, she could not imagine that Jiang Lingzhen would look like this. A national beauty, nothing more than this. Jiang Yunshan knew that there was a demon living in her heart. Its name was jealousy. The darkness in her heart continued to grow. She wanted to steal everything from Jiang Lingzhen and step on this woman under her feet. Therefore, she planned to push Jiang Lingzhen down at the temple fair. Unfortunately, Jiang Lingzhen only had a scratch on her skin, which was not a big problem. Later on, she began to deliberately seduce the crown prince. When she saw the crown prince, she knew that such a man would not reject beauty that was sent to his doorstep. As expected, the crown prince took the bait without any hesitation after using a few tricks. However, things were completely different from what he had expected. Why did Jiang Lingzhen not care at all? She had become the crown prince's concubine, but what about her? She became the only princess in the dynasty with a fief. She was still no match for her. Thus, she became crazier and crazier. But how could that woman, Jiang Lingzhen, be so lucky? The horse was killed, but she was not hurt at all. And her face, Jiang Yunshan thought. Jiang Lingzhen had come to take revenge on her. Other than her, who else would be so vicious as to poison her? She felt that Jiang Lingzhen was vicious, but he never reflected on his mistakes. The crown prince's position was in jeopardy, and she, as the crown prince's concubine, had become a joke. Jiang Yunshan thought, then let's go to hell together. She finally received the news she wanted. Princess Qingyang, Jiang Lingzhen, was assassinated and unconscious. It was unknown whether she was dead or alive. Unfortunately, before she received the news of her death, the emperor's white silk was sent to her residence. Jiang Lingzhen, I will wait for you in hell. She closed her eyes with a smile. Chapter 33. Hua City International Airport was bustling with people. There were people coming and going here every day. People from different countries and different skin colors hurried by. Many passengers subconsciously looked in one direction when they passed by. It was a man in a suit, a pure black custom-made suit, perfectly outlining his tall and straight figure. On his handsome face, his brows were slightly furrowed, and his eyes had been looking in a certain direction of the airport. Obviously, he was waiting for someone. A few ladies who weren't in a hurry quietly stood nearby. They were curious as to who could make such a charming man wait for. Soon they knew the answer. The man's eyes suddenly lit up. His expressionless face suddenly softened, and he quickly walked forward. "Cece." Gu Xingyin, who was in the crowd, subconsciously raised her head and looked at the man walking towards her. She was looking at the man, and the people around her were looking at her. Because she was traveling, Cheng Shiji was wearing relatively simple clothes. A light green waist-length dress outlined her entire figure. Wide sunglasses covered half of her face, and her light brown wavy hair added a charming feeling to her. Slender waist, long legs, fair skin, and beautiful appearance. These were the most realistic portrayals of Cheng Shiji. "Big brother." Cheng Shiji gave the man a big smile, and then handed the suitcase in her hand to the man without hesitation. Cheng Bushwan looked at his sister dotingly and played the role of a porter without complaint. If the employees in the company saw that gentle look, they would definitely exclaim that the general manager was possessed. "Big brother, didn't second brother come?" Cheng Shiji, now Gu Xingyin, asked. Cheng Bushwan replied, "Qishuan has an art exhibition today. He really can't leave." Gu Xingyin pouted. "No matter how busy he is, can he be more important than me, his sister? See if I don't exploit him ruthlessly when I go back." This time, Gu Xingyin was playing the role of Cheng Shiji. She had the image of a little princess. She came from a wealthy family and was pampered. Therefore, she could act coquettishly and throw a tantrum. Cheng Shiji was the youngest daughter of Cheng Jinxing and his wife, the head of the Cheng group. Cheng Jinxing and his wife liked daughters, but they had 2 sons after their marriage. When their youngest daughter, Cheng Shiji, was born, the couple was overjoyed. Not only did he personally visit a famous physiognomist to name his daughter Shiji, but he was also afraid that his daughter would not have a playmate. He even adopted a girl who was about the same age as Cheng Shiji from a distant relative and raised her together. The status of the adopted daughter of the chairman of the Cheng group was something that many people could only dream of. Naturally, the couple was more than willing. The adopted girl's name was Cheng Iru. In name, she was Cheng Shiji's older sister, which meant that she was the female supporting character in this world. When the original owner, Cheng Shiji, was 18 years old, she was engaged to Yuan Hang, the second young master of the Yuan group, another group in Hua City. It was originally a marriage of equal social status. Unexpectedly, Yuan Hang fell in love with Cheng Shiji's older sister, Cheng Iru. Cheng Iru also had feelings for Yuan Hang. The two of them had been secretly pulling each other. Even after Cheng Shiji and Yuan Hang got married, they did not stop contacting each other. Cheng Shiji had been neglected by her husband ever since they got married. One day, when she went out with her friends, she saw Yuan Hang and Cheng Iru kissing in the parking lot. Only then did she know that her husband had an affair with her older sister. Chapter 34. Cheng Shiji had been pampered by the Cheng family since she was young and had never suffered such grievances. She made a scene at the Yuan Corporation and returned to the Cheng family to tell her family about it. Cheng Jinxing and his wife were furious. Not only did they chase Cheng Iru out of the Cheng family, but they also divorced their daughter from Yuan Hang and stopped all business dealings with the Yuan Corporation. After Cheng Iru was chased out of the Cheng family, she lived a miserable life. She was used to living a luxurious life in the Cheng family, and it was difficult for her to live frugally. The money she earned could not meet her needs at all. Yuan Hang was also closely watched by the Yuan family and was not allowed to contact Cheng Iru. In the end, Cheng Iru had no choice but to sell her body. In the end, she contracted a terrible disease and died miserably. When she opened her eyes again, she returned to the year when she was 18 years old. The reborn Cheng Iru hated Cheng Shiji and the Cheng family. Cheng Shiji had schemed to seduce Yuan Hang. How could a young man like Yuan Hang resist a woman who had been through so much in her previous life? Soon, Yuan Hang obeyed Cheng Iru's every word. Cheng Iru said a lot of bad things about the Cheng family to Yuan Hang openly and secretly, causing Yuan Hang to hate the Cheng family, especially Cheng Shiji. She even played dirty tricks on an important project of the Cheng family and caused the Cheng family to go bankrupt. When Cheng Jinxing and his wife went abroad for business, their plane crashed. Their eldest brother was accidentally injured by a group of drunk people in a bar and lost his life. The two artists who were devoted to art were also framed and accused of plagiarism. They could not resist the pressure of public opinion and committed suicide. Cheng Shiji went from a luxurious life to an employee who had to work to pay off her debts. However, Cheng Yiru refused to let her go and hired a gangster to humiliate her. In the end, Cheng Shiji could not bear the humiliation and committed suicide. Cheng Yiru and Yuan Hang held a wedding with everyone's blessings. Gu Shengyin came to Cheng Shiji's body to reverse the changes in the world caused by Cheng Yiru's rebirth. Originally, after Cheng Shiji divorced Yuan Hang, she was still the eldest daughter of the Cheng family and was pampered by her family for a lifetime. After Gu Shengyin received the plot transmitted by the system, she felt disgusted by Cheng Yiru for no reason. It could be said that the Cheng family had never mistreated Cheng Yiru. Everything was the same as Cheng Shiji's. What about Cheng Yiru? Not only did she shamelessly seduce her younger sister's husband, everything that happened after that was her own fault. After her rebirth, she actually treated the Cheng family as her lifelong enemy and caused their family to be destroyed. Gu Shengyin's mission was to protect the Cheng family, expose Cheng Yiru's disguise, and kick away Yuan Hang, the scumbag who had let Cheng Shiji down. Cheng Buxuan drove his sister back to the Cheng family's main residence. "Miss is back." The butler, who had been guarding the door, saw Cheng Buxuan's car at a glance. As soon as Gu Shengyin got off the car, she was embraced by a noble lady. "My precious Cici, I haven't seen you for a year and you've become even more beautiful." The lady looked at Gu Shengyin carefully and added, "You seem to have lost some weight. You won't be leaving this time, right? Mom will make soup for you every day. I must take good care of you until you're white and plump." Gu Shengyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at the lady, who was Cheng Shiji's mother, Bai Fia. Cheng Shiji's mother, Bai Fia, was almost 50 years old, but she had taken good care of herself. She was graceful and beautiful. "Mom, are you going to raise me like a little pig?" Gu Shengyin's face was bitter, which made everyone tease her. Gu Shengyin looked at the man standing beside Cheng Shiji's mother. It was her father, Cheng Zhenxing. Gu Shengyin, who knew the plot, knew that Cheng Zhenxing loved his daughter as much as his wife. It was just that men were more introverted and not good at expressing their feelings. She walked forward and gave her father a gentle hug. "Dad, I missed you so much." Chapter 35. The original Cheng Shiji had been studying abroad. At the age of 17, she had already obtained a double bachelor's degree. Second brother went to an art exhibition. "What about sister?" Gu Shengyin asked. Hearing Cheng Yiru's name, Cheng Shiji's mother frowned. "I don't know what's wrong with Yiru recently. She's so mysterious every day. Sometimes she doesn't even go home at night." After all, Cheng Shiji's mother had raised her for more than 10 years. Cheng Shiji's mother also had true feelings for Cheng Yiru. Gu Shengyin thought to herself, Cheng Yiru is busy exchanging feelings with Yuan Hang. Of course, she doesn't have time to go home. That's right, Cheng Yiru had already been reborn. She was 1 year older than Cheng Shiji. She was just 18 years old. She had just been reborn last month. "Cici." At this time, a voice came from behind. Before Gu Shengyin could turn around, a big hug surrounded her. It was second brother Cheng Qishuan. Unlike the introverted and calm eldest brother Cheng Buxuan, second brother Cheng Qishuan's personality was worthy of the words, passionate like fire. Perhaps artists like them could only have a steady flow of inspiration if they always maintained such a passionate state of mind. Gu Shengyin looked at the family with a smile and secretly swore in her heart. In this life, she would never let that woman, Cheng Yiru, destroy such a perfect family. "Dad, Mom, I'm back." Cheng Yiru walked in and saw other people in the living room. Big brother, second brother. Cheng Yiru's eyes swept across and saw another person sitting on the sofa. "Little sister, you're back?" Cheng Yiru tried to control the hatred in her heart and shouted with a smile. Gu Shengyin slowly turned around, and their eyes met. Cheng Shiji looked at Cheng Yiru. She was wearing a tight shirt. She was only 18 years old, but she already had the capital to be proud of. The shirt was a little tight, and she wore a pair of denim shorts that perfectly showed off her long legs. Although her appearance was not as perfect as Cheng Shiji's, it was enough to attract men. Cheng Yiru was also looking at Cheng Shiji. Her impression of Cheng Shiji was still stuck in the memories of her previous life. At that time, Cheng Shiji was already a married woman. She was mature and beautiful, like a full and seductive peach that could easily make people go crazy. The 17-year-old her was a little different from what he remembered. Her skin was sparkling and translucent like snow. It was obvious that she had been pampered since she was young and had not been able to give birth. Cheng Yiru herself had also grown up in luxury, but she had never been able to maintain Cheng Shiji's delicate skin. Come to think of it, some things were really innate. The current Cheng Shiji still had a hint of immaturity in her eyes, but her exquisite facial features were already fully displayed. Especially the arrogance in her eyes, one could tell at a glance that this was a little princess who had been doted on by thousands of people. Cheng Yiru hated Cheng Shiji's arrogance the most. She was always like this and never needed to consider anything. The Cheng family protected her too well and considered everything for her. She just needed to be a little princess in the lighthouse forever. I told the family about my return a month ago. Sister, you didn't even know. Gu Shengyin pouted unhappily and complained half-truthfully. Cheng Yiru sneered in her heart. She had been back for a month and didn't even have time to sort out her memories from her previous life. How could she remember when she, Cheng Shiji, would come back? Cheng Shiji was like this. It was just a small matter of returning to the country, but she couldn't wait for the whole family to pick her up. Chapter 36. Brother, I don't want to see it. Gu Shengyin hugged Cheng Buishuan's hand and acted coquettishly. You're a major shareholder of the Qing Group. Of course, the people under you have to get to know you. Cheng Buishuan was not ambiguous at all. Cheng Jinxing and his wife loved their daughter as much as their life. They left Cheng Shiji 20% of the shares of the huge Qing Group. Cheng Shiji was not interested in business, and Cheng Jinxing and his wife did not intend to let their daughter be a strong woman. These shares and dividends alone were enough for Cheng Shiji to live like a princess for the rest of her life. The headquarters of the Qing Group was located in a commercial office building in the center of Hua City. The new receptionist watched the general manager walk into the elevator with a perfect smile on her face. After that, she said to her companion excitedly, "Oh my God, the general manager is really handsome. But who is the girl beside him? She looks so young, but she's so beautiful. She can make the usually serious general manager smile so gently. Could she be his fiancée?" Another girl took out a mirror to see if her makeup was smudged. After hearing her companion's words, she sneered and said, "What fiancée? Haven't you heard that our general manager has a sister?" The new receptionist was puzzled. Didn't the general manager's sister come to the company a few days ago? A few days ago, Cheng Yiru came to the company. The old employee smiled. One is his biological daughter, and the other is his adopted daughter. Tell me, which one is the general manager's sister? Cheng Jinxing and his wife never hid the fact that Cheng Yiru was their adopted daughter. Therefore, when the Yuan Group chose the marriage partner, they did not consider Cheng Yiru at all. Who is the girl beside your general manager? A man in a suit with a piercingly cold aura looked calmly at Gu Shengyin, who had one hand on Cheng Buishuan's body. The casual public relations manager breathed a sigh of relief. He was arranged by the company to receive the young master of the Yuan Group. The other party's aura was so terrifying that even he, who was used to seeing storms, felt a little breathless. Seeing that the young master of the Yuan Group was attracted by other things, he breathed a sigh of relief and quickly replied, "That's our chairman's youngest daughter, the general manager's sister, Miss Cheng Shiji." Cheng Shiji. Yuan Su repeated this name a few times in his heart. He felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity when he looked at Cheng Shiji. After thinking about it carefully, Yuan Su was sure that he had never seen her before. Thinking about it again, wasn't Cheng Shiji from the Qing Group the girl that his family wanted to marry? Was she Yuan Hang's future wife? For some reason, when Yuan Su thought of this possibility, he actually felt slightly irritated. It seemed that he needed to take a good rest after finishing all the work at hand. Yuan Su attributed this irritation to work being too busy. As if sensing something, Gu Shengyin turned around in confusion, but all she saw was a back view. Shaking her head, Gu Shengyin laughed at herself. She actually felt that Ji Yu was looking at her. But how was that possible? That person was different from him. He was no longer around. Thinking of Ji Yu, Gu Xingyin's mood instantly fell. What's wrong, Cici? Cheng Buishuan noticed that something was wrong with his sister. Gu Xingyin shook her head. I'm just a little tired. Cheng Buishuan saw that his sister looked tired, so he did not suspect anything. Then go to my lounge and sit for a while. I'll ask someone to send you home later. Gu Xingyin nodded. Chapter 37. Miss Cheng, I've heard a lot about you. A young man walked toward Gu Xingyin with a glass of red wine. Gu Xingyin smiled at him, picked up the cup in his hand, and took a sip. After sending the man away, Cheng Shiji looked around and found an inconspicuous corner to sit down. This banquet was to celebrate the collaboration between the Cheng Group and the Yuan Group on a big project. The Yuan Group and the Cheng Group were giants in Hua City's business world. Almost all the famous people in Hua City's business world came to this banquet. As the only daughter of the Cheng family, Cheng Shiji was naturally favored by countless people. Moreover, Cheng Zhenxing was famous for loving his daughter as much as his life. For many young men with average social status, if they could marry Cheng Shiji, it was equivalent to climbing up the Cheng Corporation's big tree. Gu Xingyin was very annoyed by this kind of flattery. In the previous world, she gave her heart to Ji Yu. As a person who was created, Gu Xingyin's view of relationships was quite simple. Her heart was very small and could only accommodate one person. At this moment, she was sitting in a hidden corner and coldly watching Cheng Yiru socialize with the guests like a fish in water. As the adopted daughter of the Cheng Corporation, although Cheng Yiru's popularity was not as good as Cheng Shiji's, she was still the existence that most people flattered. Cheng Yiru enjoyed this feeling very much. She remembered the last days of her previous life. Because she had contracted a serious disease, she could not receive guests. Without a source of income to support her living in a high-end neighborhood, she had to move to a dilapidated low-rent apartment. Every day, there were all kinds of curses in various dialects outside the door. Children's cries, the sound of car horns downstairs, and all kinds of dirty and messy environment. It was simply a nightmare. What about now? She was still the beautiful young lady of the Cheng family. Her previous life was like a nightmare. She swore that in this life, she would not let herself fall into that kind of situation again. Miss Cheng. A low voice interrupted Gu Xingyin's thoughts. Gu Xingyin raised her head. It was a strange man. She frowned slightly. This man's aura was too aggressive and made people unconsciously nervous. However, Gu Xingyin only frowned. She was the empress in her previous life. What kind of people had she not seen? This man was not enough to make her lose her composure. Yuan Su was a little surprised. When he was young, he had trained with his uncle who was in the army for a period of time. His aura had been honed from real bloodshed. Ordinary people would not be able to withstand it. He did not expect that this delicate little girl in front of him would not be affected at all. Yuan Su raised his eyebrows. It seemed that this Miss Cheng was not as innocent and harmless as she seemed on the surface. Hello, I'm Yuan Su. Yuan Su extended his hand. It turned out that he was Yuan Hang's brother, the young master of the Yuan Corporation. Gu Xingyin understood. Nice to meet you, Mr. Yuan. Gu Xingyin reached out and shook Yuan Su's hand. So slippery. This was Yuan Su's first thought. The warm touch in his hand made his heart flutter, as if he was holding a warm jade. No wonder the ancients said that jade was soft and fragrant. It turned out that such a woman really existed. The two of them did not talk much. They only exchanged a few words occasionally and just sat there quietly. The atmosphere was not awkward at all. Compared to the liveliness in the hall, there was a sense of tranquility. I should go out and give my speech. Yuan Su was a little reluctant to leave when he got up. Gu Xingyin got up to send him off out of politeness. However, she did not expect that her overly long skirt would restrict her movements. She twisted her leg and fell diagonally to the ground. Be careful. Gu Xingyin fell into a broad embrace. At the same time, a familiar lotus fragrance wafted into her nose. Chapter 38. Miss Cheng. Gu Xingyin was dazed by the familiar scent until Yuan Su called out to her. She came back to her senses and quickly steadied herself before thanking Yuan Su. Does Mr. Yuan like lotus-scented perfume? Gu Shengyin asked for some reason. Yuan Su laughed. No, I never use perfume. He nodded at Gu Shengyin, indicating that he wanted to leave first. The people in the hall had already begun to call out his name. Gu Shengyin was left alone in a daze. System. Gu Shengyin's voice carried a trace of anticipation. Do you think it's possible that Ji could be reincarnated like me? The system was silent for a moment before saying, in theory, this possibility doesn't exist. But the scent on his body is exactly the same as Ji. Gu Shengyin was a little excited. In the previous world, Ji's body also carried the scent of lotuses all year round. When I was with him, I was very sure that he had never used anything with the scent of lotuses. The system did not say anything. He had no way to explain this phenomenon. Gu Shengyin suddenly seemed to have come alive. Ever since she came to this world, her condition was a little strange. It was as if her entire person did not have any vitality. Although she completed the task as usual, it always made people feel that she could not find any reason to persevere. Gu Shengyin was not the system's first host. Before the system, there were several hosts. They were all like Gu Shengyin, falling in love with someone in a certain world. However, after a world passed, their lover died forever, but they themselves were still shuttling back and forth between worlds. After a long time, no matter how strong the host's willpower was, it would be difficult for them to endure. Hopeless immortality was crueler than anything else. 2 of the system's first 3 hosts requested to self-destruct. However, Gu Shengyin was different from them. Gu Shengyin was personally created by that person. In terms of status, even 10 systems couldn't compare to one Gu Shengyin. It was just that she didn't know it herself. Gu Shengyin felt that his body was full of fighting spirit again. She stared at Yuan Su, who was speaking confidently on the stage, thinking about how to verify whether he was the reincarnation of Ji. Alright. Gu Shengyin suddenly remembered. On Ji's left shoulder, there was a lotus-shaped imprint. In the previous world, when they were in love, she had teased him that he might be the reincarnation of some lotus fairy. Otherwise, why would he not only have the lotus fragrance on his body, but also the lotus mark? At that time, Ji only thought that she was joking. Other than Gu Shengyin, no one else could smell the lotus fragrance on his body. Then what about Yuan Su? Does it have the same imprint? Gu Shengyin looked at Yuan Su with burning eyes, thinking about how to take off this man's clothes to verify. After Yuan Su, Cheng Buishuan, as the heir of the Cheng's group, naturally expressed his thoughts. Finally, please allow me to introduce my sister, the little princess of the Cheng's group, Cheng Shiji. Cheng Buishuan looked at Cheng Shiji with a smile. It didn't matter that Shiji didn't like business. As her elder brother, he had enough ability to protect her for the rest of her life. However, she still had to cherish her connections and slowly build them up. In the future, they would all be her own wealth. Gu Shengyin stood up gracefully under everyone's gaze. Chapter 39. Cheng Yiru watched as Cheng Shiji stood on the stage and attracted everyone's attention. The people who had surrounded her just now were all focused on Cheng Shiji. It had been like this since she was young. As long as Cheng Shiji was around, no one could see her. She dug her nails into her palms. Suddenly she felt warm. Cheng Yiru looked up and saw Yuan Hang draping a shawl over her body. She looked at the handsome man and her heart warmed. This man, whether it was in her previous life or this life, only had eyes for her. For a moment, Cheng Yiru's heart wavered. Perhaps, it would be good to let go of the grudges from her previous life and focus on being with Yuan Hang. But when she saw the naked Cheng Shiji on the stage, she suppressed this thought in her heart. No, how could she feel at ease if she didn't see Cheng Shiji fall into the dust and the Cheng family fall? She thought of her arrangements and smiled. Yuan Su stood in the crowd and frowned when he saw Yuan Hang and Cheng Yiru being intimate as if no one else was around. Both brothers knew that their family wanted Yuan Hang and Madame Cheng to be connected by marriage. And because of his refusal to cooperate, the family had already decided to let the second son, Yuan Hang, marry the Cheng family. There could only be one person who could marry the Cheng family, and that was Cheng Shiji. After all, Chung Yiru was just an adopted daughter. For a solid marriage, a daughter without the direct bloodline of the Chung family was obviously not enough. But Yuan Hang and Chung Yiru were clearly in love with each other. Yuan Su looked at Chung Shiji standing on the stage elegantly like a noble white swan. He couldn't help but feel that his younger brother, who already had feelings for her sister, was not worthy of her. Such a woman should have a lover who loved her wholeheartedly. She deserved to be pampered and doted on the best. Yuan Su shook his head. He felt a little strange that he was thinking about this. He felt that his emotions were a little abnormal these 2 days. Gu Xingyin walked down the stage. She felt a little thirsty and a waiter happened to pass by. She picked up a glass of champagne and took a sip. Gu Xingyin subconsciously searched for Yuan Su's figure, but he found that the man had disappeared. Could it be that he had already left? She suddenly felt a little bored, so she simply found her previous seat and sat down, waiting for the banquet to end so that she could go home with her brother. Why was it so hot? Gu Xingyin sat for a while and felt the temperature in the air rise. It was impossible for such a top-notch hotel to make such a mistake. Gu Xingyin quickly realized that the problem was not with the hotel, but with herself. Unknowingly, he had been drugged. She carefully recalled what had happened before. The only possibility was that when she had just stepped off the stage, she had taken a glass of wine from a passing waiter. Which was the glass of champagne in front of him. Damn it! Gu Xingyin cursed herself for being careless. She felt the heat in her body getting stronger and stronger. She hurried to the bathroom. He couldn't lose his composure in this hall. Not far away, Chung Yiru smiled and chatted with the people around her. From the corner of her eye, she saw Chung Shiji walking unsteadily towards the bathroom. Her lips curled into an ambiguous smile. She apologized to the people around her and walked to the side to pick up her phone. Hello. You can come over now. Chapter 40. Gu Xingyin stood in front of the sink and splashed the cold water on her face. It was useless. Feeling the heat in her body getting hotter and hotter, she took out her mobile phone and wanted to call her elder brother and ask him to come and take her home quickly. The surging tide in her body made her hands a little unsteady. She pressed several buttons before unlocking the screen of the mobile phone and found her elder brother's column in the contact list. Gu Xingyin was just about to dial when the mobile phone in her hand was snatched away by a hand. Gu Xingyin looked up and saw the face of a strange man. She panicked for no reason and forced a straight face and said, "What are you doing? Give me back my mobile phone quickly." The man looked at Gu Xingyin's face with some greed. He received a call from his employer saying that the person was in the bathroom on the 29th floor of the hotel. He was responsible for taking the person away and then, even if he didn't succeed, as long as the woman in front of him appeared in front of everyone with her clothes disheveled, the task would be completed. Not only could he enjoy the luck with women, but he could also get a considerable amount of money. Gu Xingyin saw that the expression in the man's eyes was getting more and more wrong. Alarm bells rang in her heart. Unfortunately, the soundproofing here was excellent. Even if she shouted loudly, the people outside couldn't hear her. She had to say harshly, "No matter who ordered you to do this, that person must not have told you who I am. I am the eldest daughter of the Qing group. You should know what kind of existence the Qing group is. If something happens to me here today, no matter where you run, my father and brother will not let you go." The man paused. The employer did not tell him who the girl was. The Qing group. If what she said was true, Gu Xingyin saw that he hesitated and was happy. She continued to say, "If you leave now, I can promise that today's matter didn't happen. I can pay you double how much the person behind you paid you." At this time, her breathing was unstable. Her body had no strength under the effect of the drug. She had to lean on the sink behind her to not fall down. The man was obviously hesitating. Gu Xingyin called the system in her heart. "If this man doesn't compromise, you have the ability to help me get away smoothly, right?" The system immediately replied, "Don't worry, as your guide, I have the responsibility to ensure your safety when you are not around the mission target." Gu Xingyin no longer had the energy to discuss the scope of this non-mission objective with the system. "No. I almost fell into your trap. Do you think I don't know you rich people? It's good to talk face to face, but the moment you turn around, he'll stab you in the back." The man had clearly made his decision. He looked at Gu Shengyin and said, "It's not a loss for me to enjoy a beauty like you." As soon as he finished speaking, his hand had already reached out to grab Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin was wearing a champagne-colored off-the-shoulder evening gown today, and she was already in a precarious situation. "System." Seeing that the man's hand was about to reach elsewhere, Gu Shengyin hurriedly shouted. However, the system was not as fast as the other person. A black figure quickly ran over and fiercely punched the face of the man who was imprisoning Gu Shengyin. A familiar lotus fragrance filled Gu Shengyin's body. She suddenly felt very wronged. She turned around and threw herself into the man's arms. Her mouth twitched and tears rolled down. Chapter 41. Yuan Su had no time to care about the man moaning on the ground. He was a little upset at that time, so he walked outside. Just as he was about to smoke in the bathroom, an inexplicable feeling filled his heart. He had a feeling that something bad was about to happen. His sixth sense had been very accurate since he was young, and this special sense had helped him avoid several disasters. Following his senses, Yuan Su walked to the ladies' bathroom. At first, Yuan Su was still hesitating whether to enter or not, but as soon as he put his hand on the door handle, he realized that something was wrong. The door was locked. This kind of bathroom had a separate cubicle inside. Logically speaking, unless the hotel had repaired the door, it was impossible for it to be locked from the outside. The premonition in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Without any time to think, Yuan Su kicked the door open. Then he saw a scene that made his eyes pop out of their sockets. Gu Shengyin, who had been dazzling in the hall a moment ago, was now being pressed down by a wretched man. Looking at her dazed expression and blurred eyes, it was obvious that she had been drugged. Yuan Su only felt that at that moment, all the blood in his body rushed to his brain. He had never lost control like this before. He punched the man until he couldn't get up. He took off his suit and covered Qing Shiji with it. Unexpectedly, when Qing Shiji saw him, she pouted and threw herself into his arms and cried. The girl in his arms cried so pitifully that Yuan Su felt that his heart was about to be crushed by her cries. Looking at the man on the ground, Yuan Su knew that Gu Shengyin's current state was not suitable for others to see. He leaned over, picked her up, and left. When he passed by the man on the ground, he deliberately paused for a moment and took the phone from his hand. He raised his foot and stepped on the man's right hand. He had seen that the man had used this hand to touch Gu Shengyin. Crack! The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Ignoring the man's wailing behind him, Yuan Su carried Gu Shengyin out. When the people in the hall heard the commotion and rushed over, they only saw a broken door and a man lying on the ground moaning and rolling on the ground. Cheng Yiru was annoyed. She didn't expect Qing Shiji to be able to escape under such circumstances. Yuan Su carried Qing Shiji and walked through a special passageway. This hotel belonged to the Yuan family and only a few people knew about this passageway. He brought Gu Shengyin to his private room in the hotel, put her on the bed, and went into the bathroom to turn on the water for her. When he came out and saw the person on the bed, he was stunned for a moment. Gu Shengyin's mind was already in a blur. She only felt that it was very hot, and the dress on her body had already slipped off as she was constantly rubbing and pulling. What appeared in front of Yuan Su was a body that made one's blood boil. She was young and inexperienced, yet infinitely attractive. Yuan Su felt his blood rushing to his head. With his status, there were naturally many women who threw themselves at him, but there had never been a woman like Qing Shiji who could give him such an impulse. Thinking of this young lady's age, she seemed to be underage. Yuan Su cursed himself for being such a beast. He picked her up with a blanket and put her in the bathtub that had already been filled with water. He didn't expect that Gu Shengyin, who was in his arms, would not cooperate at all. In a daze, Gu Shengyin sensed Ji Yu's breath and felt relieved. When she sensed that he was about to leave, she naturally clung to him and refused to let go. Chapter 42. Yuan Su helplessly looked at the little woman who held him tightly and refused to let go. There was a doting smile at the corner of his mouth that even he himself didn't notice. He was willing to be a mother for once. Fortunately, although the drug Gu Shengyin was drugged with had an aphrodisiac effect, it did not necessarily need to be relieved. After Yuan Su bathed Gu Xingyin, her face was still flushed, but it was no longer as obvious as before that she was drugged. Yuan Su took out his mobile phone and called Cheng Buishuan. Cheng Buishuan's face changed when he received the phone call. He said goodbye to the people around him and left in a hurry. Yuan Su hung up the phone and quietly stared at Gu Xingyin's peaceful sleeping face. After a long time, he leaned over and kissed her forehead. "Little girl, if you provoke me, it won't be so easy to get away." Cheng Buishuan almost trotted all the way. The first thing he asked when he saw Yuan Su was, "Is Cici okay?" Yuan Su wasn't so gentle to others. His voice was deep. "She's fine now. If I'm late, she'll be in trouble." Cheng Buishuan didn't care about his tone. He leaned over and saw that his sister was sleeping soundly. He could tell at a glance that Gu Xingyin wasn't wearing the clothes that she wore when she went out. His face changed. "Cici's clothes?" Yuan Su's face didn't change. "When I found her, her clothes were already ruined, so I changed them for her." Cheng Buishuan, it was obviously his sister who was taken advantage of, but he couldn't refute it. It felt really suffocating. But the next moment, his mind was attracted by Yuan Su's words. What did he mean by ruined clothes? Yuan Su knew what he was thinking when he saw his expression. "Don't worry, Cici is fine." Cheng Buishuan, "Wait, are you familiar with my sister?" Cici called him so smoothly. "But remember to check her after you take her back. She was drugged with an aphrodisiac. Although she looks fine, it's better to check." Cheng Buishuan nodded. He didn't ask Gu Xingyin to get up. He leaned over and carried his sister away. Yuan Su suddenly realized that he was actually feeling jealous about this. They were biological siblings. He watched as Cheng Buishuan carried Gu Xingyin and left through the special passage. After all, Gu Xingyin's current appearance was not suitable for others to see. When the two figures disappeared from his sight, Yuan Su retracted his gaze and casually made a call. "Hello, in half an hour, get me all the surveillance footage for today." His gaze was cold. No matter who it was, since they dared to touch the person he fancied, they should be prepared to bear the consequences. Once the big boss gave the order, his subordinates moved quickly. In less than half an hour, the things that Yuan Su wanted appeared in front of him one by one. "Cheng Yiru." Yuan Su looked at the surveillance footage that was never shown to outsiders. His voice was so cold that it could freeze. "Brother, that's impossible. You must have misunderstood Yiru." Yuan Hang looked at the things his brother showed him and said angrily, "She is so weak and kind. How could she do something like frame her sister?" Yuan Hang didn't believe it at all. He even suspected that Qing Shiji had directed and acted out all of this. Did that woman Qing Shiji say that? Let me tell you, brother, don't be fooled by her appearance. She is a vicious woman. You don't even know how she treated Yiru. Cheng Yiru's baptism of Yuan Hang was quite successful. When she mentioned Qing Shiji, Yuan Hang's face was full of disgust. Chapter 43. When Gu Xingyin woke up, she found herself back in her room. "System." She called out to the system. "What happened after I fainted?" The system played a scene in Gu Xingyin's mind. It started when Gu Xingyin was in a daze and ended when Cheng Buishuan carried her away. Oh my God! Gu Xingyin wanted to cover her face. It was bad enough that she clung to Yuan Su and refused to let go. She even asked Yuan Su to give her a bath. She felt embarrassed watching the replay. She could imagine how Yuan Su felt at that time. Gu Xingyin decided that she had fainted at that time, so she didn't know anything. However, I still don't know if Yuan Su is Jiyu. Gu Xingyin was a little distressed. "Baby Cici, you're awake?" Mrs. Cheng pushed the door open and was very happy to see Gu Xingyin awake. "Buishuan said that you drank too much. He was afraid that you would feel uncomfortable, so he asked Dr. Jiang to come over." This child, such a small matter made Dr. Jiang come all the way here on such a hot day. Mrs. Cheng complained, but her eyes clearly showed that she was very satisfied with her eldest son's behavior. Dr. Jiang was the private doctor of the Cheng family. Gu Xingyin understood that Cheng Buishuan probably didn't tell Mrs. Cheng that she had been drugged. "I'm fine." Gu Xingyin quickly got up from the bed and deliberately turned around to show that she was in good condition. Mrs. Cheng smiled and said, "It's good that you're fine. It just so happens that the two sons of the Yuan family are here to visit your father. You should take some time to get along with Yuan Hang. The relationship between Cheng Shiji and Yuan Hang was tacitly acknowledged by both families. Mrs. Cheng never thought of hiding it from Cheng Shiji. In their opinion, Yuan Hang was handsome and polite to the elders. He was a good candidate for a husband. However, it was best that Cici liked him. If Cici was really unwilling, they wouldn't force their precious daughter to marry a man she didn't like. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up. Yuan Su was here too? Mrs. Cheng saw that her daughter's eyes lit up when she heard her words and thought that her daughter was looking forward to meeting Yuan Hang. She was very pleased. It seemed that they had chosen the right person. Gu Xingyin came to the front hall and saw Yuan Su and Yuan Hang sitting there. Her second brother Cheng Qishuan and Cheng Yiru were also beside them. Cici, you're awake? Cheng Qishuan saw his sister walking downstairs and quickly got up to Gu Xingyin. He reached out and touched her forehead. He was relieved when he felt that there was no fever. Gu Xingyin greeted the two of them. Yuan Su was indifferent to everyone, but Yuan Hang was the opposite. He was somewhat indifferent to Gu Xingyin. Cheng Qishuan frowned when he saw this. Cheng Shiji, I have something to tell you. Gu Xingyin was looking at a newly bloomed potted plant on the balcony when she heard Yuan Hang. Second young master Yuan, if you have something to say, just say it. Gu Xingyin said indifferently without turning her head. Yuan Hang's tone was not good. Gu Xingyin was not a person who would repay evil with good. My eldest brother said that Iru drugged you. Iru is so kind, how could she do such a thing? Did you say something bad about Iru in front of my eldest brother? Yuan Hang asked. Gu Xingyin straightened up. It was the first time she looked at Yuan Hang seriously since she came to this mission world. He was gentle and could be considered an elite man. He didn't look like there was something wrong with his brain. Why are you looking at me like that? Yuan Hang was a little uncomfortable under Gu Xingyin's gaze. Chapter 44. I'm wondering where second young master Yuan gets the confidence to say these words. Gu Xingyin said slowly, in terms of relationship, I just returned from abroad and only met your eldest brother once at a banquet. Why would first young master Yuan believe the one-sided words of a stranger like me? Moreover, our engagement was tacitly agreed by both families. I don't believe that second young master Yuan is unaware of it. Your fiancé was almost drugged at the banquet. Not only did you turn a blind eye to it, but you even questioned me because of someone else? Not to mention, how could Cheng Yiru be so shameless that I, Cheng Shiji, would not hesitate to drug myself just to frame her? Second young master Yuan, before you speak next time, please bring your IQ with you. Otherwise, I can still explain so much to you calmly this time. Next time I'll just leave. Yuan Hang's face turned red at her words. Cheng Shiji, I have an appointment with someone to go for a facial in the afternoon. Second young master Yuan, please excuse me. Gu Xingyin did not even look at him. She really did not like a man who was so easily deceived by women. After Gu Xingyin left, Yuan Su walked out from around the corner. His eyes were shockingly bright. He, Yuan Su, had never seen such a sharp-tongued woman. She was really a damn bewitching woman. She's right. Yuan Hang, you've really been bewitched by that woman, Cheng Yiru. Yuan Su said coldly to his younger brother. Also, since you already have someone in your heart, I'll personally communicate with father. You're not suitable for a marriage alliance with the Cheng family, Yuan Su said. Eldest brother? Yuan Hang was a little stunned. Yuan Su's face darkened. What? You're not planning to have an ambiguous relationship with that woman, Cheng Yiru, and marry Cheng Shiji at the same time, are you? Yuan Hang's face turned red. He really did think so. Anyway, it was just a marriage alliance between families. That woman, Cheng Shiji, was just marrying her. Yuan Su only felt a surge of anger filling his chest. How come he had never realized before that his own younger brother was actually such a scumbag? Miss Cheng, we meet again. Yuan Su smiled gently at Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin was speechless. In the past 10 days, the two of them had, coincidentally, met 6 times. Hua City was so big, and Gu Xingyin didn't believe that this man wasn't involved in this. What a coincidence, Mr. Yuan. Gu Xingyin was also smiling. Gu Xingyin's attitude towards Yuan Su had been good ever since she found out that Yuan Su was most likely Ji Yu's reincarnation. It's fate that brought us together. Why don't we have a meal together? Yuan Su further extended his invitation. Gu Xingyin naturally wouldn't refuse. The location was chosen by Yuan Su. It was a famous Chinese restaurant in the city, famous for its exquisite dishes and authentic taste. When they went out, Gu Xingyin coincidentally saw Yuan Hang and Chen Yiru walking in hand. Yuan Su glanced at Gu Xingyin's expression. When he saw that her expression didn't change, he was relieved. Although he heard her conversation with Yuan Hang that time and roughly guessed that she didn't have any romantic feelings for Yuan Hang, he was still a little worried. Therefore, he thought of ways to let Gu Xingyin see the intimate scene between her younger brother and Chen Yiru. Based on her observation over the past few days, Gu Xingyin was an extremely prideful person. He was a man who had someone else in his heart. No matter how much she liked him before, there was no possibility between the two of them. Chapter 45. Of course, Gu Xingyin saw Yuan Hang and Chen Yiru. She was familiar with the plot and knew that the two of them had been together for a long time. However, Yuan Su was still by her side. She turned to Yuan Su and said, "I'm sure Mr. Yuan knows about the relationship between me and second young Master Yuan. Now it seems that second young Master Yuan likes my sister more." Yuan Su immediately understood what she meant. He was secretly happy, but he just nodded. "Cici, don't worry. The Yuan family will give the Cheng family an explanation." He paused for a moment and said, "Your brother and I are very good friends. You always call me Mr. Yuan. Why don't you call me Big Brother Yuan?" Gu Xingyin said, "Big Brother Yuan." Yuan Su only felt that her voice made him feel comfortable all over. Yuan Su moved quickly. Of course, the parents of the Yuan family were not happy that their son gave up the little princess of the Cheng family and married an adopted daughter. However, they were persuaded by their eldest son. Yuan Hang has someone else in his heart. After marriage, he can't treat Cici wholeheartedly. If something happens in the future, the two families will not be united but enemies. Moreover, Yuan Hang is not the only one who wants to marry into the Cheng family. Yuan Su's mother was surprised. "Haven't you always been unwilling?" Yuan Su smiled. "That was in the past. Now I think Cici is very good." Seeing this, his parents did not say much. Originally, they wanted their eldest son to marry into the Cheng family. However, at that time, Yuan Su firmly refused to marry a woman whose background was unknown. The couple had no choice but to change to their youngest son. Now that Yuan Hang had someone in his heart and their eldest son was interested in the Cheng family's daughter, they had no objections if the Cheng family was willing. However, that Chen Yiru absolutely could not enter their Yuan family. Yuan Su's parents were used to seeing storms. Chen Yiru knew that Yuan Hang was engaged to her sister, but she still had an ambiguous relationship with him. The Yuan family could not afford such a woman. This was the world's parents. Obviously, this kind of thing could not be done by Chen Yiru alone, but they completely pushed the responsibility to her. During this time, Gu Xingyin was preparing for a big event. Cheng Shiji's father, Cheng Zhenxing, turned 50 at the end of the month. In the original plot, Cheng Shiji spent a lot of money to buy a white jade guanyin from a jade carving master. Cheng Zhenxing ordered people to keep it well on the spot and put it in the hall of his house. Cheng Shiji was in the limelight at this birthday banquet. Gu Xingyin didn't plan to change the gift this time. She just put more thought into the selection of materials and the use of materials. She personally checked the workmanship and carvings, making sure that they were the best. Father Cheng's birthday was coming soon. Because his beloved youngest daughter had proudly said that she had prepared a big gift for him, Cheng Zhenxing specially announced that the gifts from his children would be made public in front of all the guests. Cheng Buxuan had always been rich and generous, and his gifts were as expensive as ever. Cheng Qishuan presented an oil painting that he had personally painted. The people in the painting were Father and Mother Cheng. Next was Chen Yiru's turn. Chen Yiru had dressed up carefully today. The pure white dress outlined her voluptuous figure, and her slightly curly hair added a charm to her. She noticed that all the guests were looking at her. She couldn't help but glance in Qing Shiji's direction and clap her hands lightly. Two bodyguards in suits carried something covered with a red cloth into the hall. Chen Yiru personally went forward and lifted the red cloth. Chapter 46. The red cloth covering the gift was removed, and the item carried by the two bodyguards appeared in front of the guests. There was a burst of exclamations. Yuan Su's face turned ashen when he saw the item covered by the red cloth. The gift that Qing Yiru had ordered was a white jade guanyin. Yuan Su knew that Qing Shiji had been preparing a birthday gift for her father. He also knew how much effort she had put into this gift. He had accompanied her and watched her go to the master in charge of the carving every day. She had personally checked every detail and refused to compromise. However, Qing Yiru had presented a guanyin in front of her, making her efforts of the past 2 months a joke. She had tried so hard to give her father a surprise, but someone else had beaten her to it. With Qing Yiru in front of her, if Qing Shiji presented the same gift again, it would only make people feel that it was boring. Qing Yiru was still saying, "This white jade guanyin was completed in half a year by an overseas master I invited. I also specially asked Master Hui Jing to consecrate it. Your daughter wishes you happiness as great as the East Sea and longevity as long as the South Mountains." The guests praised Qing Yiru's father for having a filial daughter. Qing Yiru's father was also grinning from ear to ear. Qing Yiru smiled proudly. Of course, she knew what Qing Shiji's gift was. In her previous life, Qing Shiji had made a name for herself with a white jade guanyin. This time, she had deliberately presented this white jade guanyin in front of her. "Qing Shiji, can you still present the gift in your hand?" Yuan Su looked at Qing Shiji worriedly. He was surprised to find that Qing Shiji did not seem to care very much. Qing Shiji was communicating with the system. "I was careless. I forgot that Qing Yiru has the memory of her previous life. She clearly wants to use this opportunity to humiliate me." The system did not expect this either. "Host, quickly think of a solution." At this time, only Qing Shiji's gift had not been presented. It was rumored that Qing Jinxing doted on this youngest daughter the most. The guests present were secretly guessing what Gu Shengyin would present. Qing Yiru sneered. "Qing Shiji, what will you do? If you take out the white jade guanyin that you have prepared, it will undoubtedly be disappointing. I don't believe that you would be able to prepare anything in such a short period of time if you were to change it at the last minute." She was in a good mood and was waiting for Qing Shiji to make a fool of herself. Everyone looked at Gu Shengyin, but she didn't say anything. Qing Jinxing also noticed that something was wrong. He smiled and said, "What's wrong? Could it be that my CC doesn't want others to see the present that she gave to Dad? Does she want Dad to go back and see it alone?" If Gu Shengyin really didn't prepare a gift, as long as she responded to his words, the awkwardness would be resolved. Qing Yiru gritted her teeth so hard that she almost broke her teeth. Before Gu Shengyin could say anything, Qing Yiru smiled and said, "Little sister, you can't be so selfish. We're all waiting to see what you've secretly prepared for Dad." Qing Yiru's mother looked at Qing Yiru unhappily. Qing Yiru knew that her words were abrupt, but she couldn't tolerate it. Why was it that even if she, Qing Shiji, had made a mistake, so many people would rush to help her out? Today, she wanted to embarrass her in front of everyone in Quanhua City. Gu Shengyin glanced at Qing Yiru. She didn't know why, but Qing Yiru felt that her gaze made her a little scared. She always felt that something was out of her control. Gu Shengyin said, "Since sister wants to see it so much, then I'll embarrass myself in front of everyone." Chapter 47. As Gu Shengyin spoke, people brought things up one after another. Yuan Su took a closer look. These were clearly not the white jade guanyin that had been prepared earlier. Soon, a table was set up in front of Gu Shengyin, and a piece of fine rice paper was spread out on it. It was actually the 4 treasures of the study. What did she want to do? Qing Yiru frowned. In her previous life, she had never heard of Qing Shiji having any achievements in the study of Chinese literature. She was just trying to gain favor with the crowd. She comforted herself and suppressed the bad premonition that rose in her heart. Clearly, many people were interested in Gu Shengyin and wanted to see what she was up to. The Qing family members were also curious. They never knew that their youngest daughter had such a trick up her sleeve. Gu Shengyin didn't care what other people thought. Since she was created, she was proficient in all kinds of skills, whether it was the zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, wine, or tea. Because she was particularly interested in ink painting, Jiyu had specially invited the famous painting master of the Tianqi dynasty, Elder Baishan, to personally enter the palace to teach her. Later on, Elder Baishan had personally admitted that in terms of attainment in painting, the empress was on par with her. Raising her hand to brush the rice paper, Gu Shengyin was somewhat dissatisfied. Although she had already had the best brush, ink, paper, and inkstone sent over, in terms of quality, it was still much worse than what she had used in her previous world. However, it was barely satisfactory. She closed her eyes and calmed her heart. When she opened her eyes again, Gu Shengyin raised her brush and began to write on the rice paper. Originally, the guests were just watching for fun and didn't have much expectation. How high could a young girl in her teens be expected to be? Even if Gu Shengyin's painting was only of an amateur level, as long as Cheng Jinxing said he liked it, they would still praise it. But soon, their disapproval was replaced by amazement. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, who would have thought that it was the work of a 17-year-old girl? Among the guests, there was no lack of people who had a deep understanding of Chinese literature. As the painting was completed, their gazes changed from amazement to infatuation. As Gu Shengyin finished the last stroke, someone finally couldn't help but shout, "Good!" Many people were still immersed in the artistic conception of the painting. They were displeased when they were suddenly interrupted. When they turned their heads and saw the person who spoke, they immediately swallowed their complaints. "So it's Mr. Da." Someone recognized the old man who spoke. The strokes are gentle but vigorous. The artistic conception is profound and profound. The characters are vivid and lifelike without exaggeration. "Good, good, good." Old Mr. Da said "good" 3 times in a row before looking at Gu Shengyin. "May I know who little friend Cheng's master is?" Old Mr. Da's eyes shone. Gu Shengyin took out the speech she had prepared beforehand. "When I was studying abroad, I met an old gentleman named Baishan. I learned Chinese painting from him for many years. Elder Baishan was Gu Shengyin's teacher. However, it was not in a foreign country, but in another world." Sure enough, old Mr. Da thought for a long time but still couldn't figure out who this Elder Baishan was. It seemed that he was an expert who lived in seclusion abroad. Old Mr. Da sighed in his heart. To be able to teach a student like Qing Shiji, that old gentleman could be called a master of his generation. "Old Mr. Da, this painting?" Someone couldn't help but ask. Gu Shengyin's painting was a birthday painting. The content of the painting was an old immortal with a kind smile holding a peach in his hand. They could only be considered as laymen. When they looked at the painting, they felt that it was very good, but they couldn't tell why. Chapter 48. Mr. Da glared at the person who asked the question with disdain. "I'm the one who said it. What would an ordinary person like you know?" The person looked embarrassed and touched his nose. Gu Shengyin was a little curious. She knew the person who spoke. He was considered a reputable figure in Hua City. How could he be so mercilessly despised by old Mr. Da without any dissatisfaction? Old Mr. Da glanced at that person and said, "Let me tell you this. Even if I personally made this birthday painting, it wouldn't be better than this little friend Cheng's." This old Mr. Da's words caused many people to gasp in shock. Who was Mr. Da? He was one of the leading figures in Chinese painting. He had represented China in many international cultural exchange competitions. Many a young man would have been proud of a word of praise from old Mr. But now, Mr. Da admitted that Cheng Shiji, who was only 17 years old, was as good as him in painting? Ha. Cheng Jinxing finally came back to his senses from the news that his daughter had somehow become a master of Chinese arts. He immediately held the painting up as if it was a treasure and looked at it endlessly. Gu Shengyin blinked and acted cute. "Dad, you like it?" Cheng Jinxing smiled happily. "I like it. Of course I like it. How could I not like it when my precious Cici painted it?" He said that he would hang the painting in his study and look at it every day. Cheng Jinxing proudly looked around and saw many good friends and business partners complimenting him. Many of them even jealously praised him for having a few good children. His eldest son had amazing talent in business, and the Cheng group had a successor in his hands. His second son was not interested in business and was now a famous painter. His wife had planned to not interfere with his only daughter's interests and hobbies. They would even pamper her for the rest of her life. They did not expect her to have such amazing talent in Chinese painting. Cheng Jinxing felt that he had never had such a happy birthday. At this time, no one paid attention to Cheng Yiru, who had offered a valuable white jade guanyin. Everyone was expressing their appreciation and admiration for Cheng Shiji. Cheng Yiru gritted her teeth so hard that they hurt. She had never expected Cheng Shiji to have such a trick up her sleeve. She had wanted to embarrass her, but she had ended up helping her instead. After taking one last look at the bustling hall, Cheng Yiru turned around and left. Cheng Shiji, the future is long. Let's wait and see. Yuan Su looked at Gu Xingyin, who was surrounded by people, and the desire in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Every time he felt that he had understood her well enough, this little woman would always bring him another round of surprises. She was like a gift that had been carefully wrapped. Only after unwrapping layer by layer would one be able to see the beauty inside. However, Cheng Shiji was so dazzling that she didn't want others to see her. Yuan Su's eyes flashed with a strange light. He really wanted to lock this little woman up and put her in a place where only he could see her. He wanted her to shine only for him. Gu Xingyin felt a little cold inexplicably. She shivered and looked up in confusion. The weather was good today. She turned to look in Yuan Su's direction. He gave her a gentle smile. Chapter 49. After Cheng Jinxing's birthday, Cheng Shiji's reputation had spread throughout the upper circle of Hua City. Many madams from wealthy families would intentionally or unintentionally inquire about Cheng Shiji's situation when they were chatting with Cheng Shiji's mother. When they heard that she had no plans to go abroad after returning to China, they were all full of smiles and began to introduce their sons and nephews. A young lady like Cheng Shiji had a good status and good looks. For a family like theirs, these two characteristics were not considered too rare. However, Cheng Shiji was someone who had been personally praised by old Mr. De. Based on this alone, no one else could compare to her. For a business family like theirs, they were already wealthy enough. If they wanted to further their reputation, the fastest way was to find a daughter-in-law who was noble enough. Cheng Shiji's mother was all smiles as she dealt with these madams, but her mouth was tight. Their Cici was only 17 years old. Moreover, there was the Yuan family who had long been in agreement. At this time, Cheng Shiji's mother never expected that when she returned home, there would be a huge surprise waiting for her. What do these mean? Cheng Shiji's mother looked at the photos on the table with some disbelief and her eldest son who was silent. Cheng Jinxing was also sitting there with a livid expression. His chest was heaving up and down. It was obvious that he was very angry. The second son, Cheng Qishuan, said, "A few days ago, when Big Brother and I went shopping, we saw Yuan Hang and Ir shopping together. They all grew up together. Originally, it wasn't a big deal, but when they left, they even kissed. Only then did we realize that something was wrong. These 2 days, Big Brother and I found a private investigator in private to investigate. If we didn't investigate, we wouldn't have known that Cheng Yiru and Yuan Hang had been together for a long time." The more Cheng Qishuan spoke, the angrier he became. In the end, he even called Cheng Yiru by her full name. According to the date on the photo, as early as when Cheng Shiji was still abroad, Cheng Yiru and Yuan Hang were already secretly in love. But Cheng Jinxing slapped the table directly and said to his eldest son, "Call Cheng Yiru back immediately." Cheng Bushuan called Cheng Yiru. Cheng Jinxing frowned. "Don't let Cici know about this. How could his daughter, who he pampered so much, be dirted by this kind of thing?" "No need, I already know." Gu Xingyin pushed the door open and came in. She hugged Mr. Cheng, who was still fuming. "Dad, I'm all grown up now. I can make my own judgment." Mr. Cheng looked at Cheng Shiji carefully and found that there was no trace of anger or sadness on his daughter's face. He was surprised and asked, "Cici, are you okay?" Gu Xingyin wrinkled her nose. "What's wrong with me?" Yuan Hang and I aren't officially engaged. We're just strangers who have a good relationship. I don't like him." She paused for a moment before continuing, "Moreover, I already knew about the matter between him and my sister." As soon as she said this, the other 4 people in the room were shocked. Mrs. Chung immediately imagined a scene where her daughter found out that her fiancé was having an affair with her sister. She secretly felt sad and refused to tell her family, so she could only bear it alone. "My poor Cece, it's really hard on you." Mrs. Cheng seemed like she would take out her handkerchief to wipe her tears in the next second. Gu Shengyin, ? What did she say just now? How did she poke at her mother's sore spot? Chapter 50. Gu Shengyin said to the 4 of them, "Actually, I've long wanted to tell Mom and Dad to cancel the engagement with Yuan Hang. I don't like him." Mother Chung took Gu Shengyin's hand. "You child, you should have told your father and me about this earlier. Yuan Hang, that kid, is such a scoundrel. This marriage between you and him is impossible no matter what." Gu Shengyin breathed a sigh of relief. She had finally thrown this big burden away. At this time, Xingru came back. She sensed that the atmosphere in the room was a little strange. Her family, who were usually kind to her, had strange expressions on their faces. "Brother, why did you call me back in such a hurry?" Cheng Yiru forced a smile. Father Cheng and Mother Cheng didn't say anything. Cheng Qishuan pointed to a pile of photos on the table. "Take a look for yourself." Cheng Yiru walked forward and took a look. With just one look, her face turned pale. It was full of intimate photos of her and Yuan Hang. "Yiru, ask yourself, how have your father and I treated you all these years? Even our biological daughter can't be better than this, right? What about you? How long have you been with Yuan Hang? Don't tell me that you don't know that we have an agreement with the Yuan family that he will be your sister's husband in the future." Mother Cheng stared at Cheng Yiru. Cheng Yiru was a little caught off guard. She didn't expect this to be exposed so quickly. Cheng Yiru was a little speechless. What could she say? "Are you saying that everything in this photo is fake?" Since the Cheng family dared to take it out, they must have verified its authenticity. "I know that Yuan Hang and I have let my sister down in this matter, but when it comes to love, we really can't help it." Cheng Yiru's face was pale, and tears fell down. She looked extremely pitiful. "Then I want to ask, sister, if we didn't find out about this today, how long did you plan to lose control with him? Even if Yuan Hang and I get married in the future, what if you accidentally lose control?" Gu Shengyin asked coldly. She wasn't talking nonsense. In the original plot, Cheng Yiru and Yuan Hang's relationship was really unclear after Cheng Shiji and Yuan Hang got married. Cheng Yiru looked at Cheng Shiji with tears in her eyes. "Cece, why do you think so? When the time comes, I will leave him." It was easy for a beauty to arouse the pity of others. Unfortunately, the people standing here were the Cheng family who loved Cheng Shiji. "When the time comes, you will leave him. I'm afraid that when Cece gets married, you will have an illegitimate child." In the face of someone who wanted to hurt her daughter, Mrs. Cheng didn't even care about her usual demeanor and went straight to the point. "Iru's Cheng Shiji to Cheng Shiji, Chengs. Tomorrow I to you. Cheng Shiji, to Shiji's to leave and to Iru's Shiji's. Shi, Cheng to Cheng, Shi to Cheng's to Cheng to be, SMR. Cheng turned his face away and refused to look at her. If Cheng Yiru was fine, he would naturally be a kind father. In the future, he would find her a good family and marry her grandly. However, she shouldn't have coveted something that didn't belong to her and hurt Cece. Cheng Yiru walked out of the room with a pale face. Gu Shengyin didn't plead for Cheng Yiru. She wasn't a saint. How could she forgive Cheng Yiru under such circumstances? Chapter 51. I'll talk to your mom. You can go back to your rooms. Cheng Yiru's father looked tired. After all, they had raised their daughter for 18 years. Cheng Yiru's father and mother had truly fallen in love with each other. Naturally, they would be sad at this moment. Gu Shengyin walked forward and hugged her parents. Cheng Yiru was a scourge to the Cheng family. She couldn't let her stay in the Cheng family. Cheng Yiru carried her bag and left the Cheng family. However, she didn't go home. Instead, she stayed in a small apartment that Yuan Hang bought for her. Yuan Hang was comforting Qing Yuru in a flurry. Qing Yuru was crying like a weeping beauty. She didn't look pitiful at all. After asking for a long time, Yuan Hang finally found out what had happened from Qing Yuru's mouth. Of course, what Yuan Hang heard was that the Qing family found out about their relationship. Qing Yuru was loyal and unyielding to their feelings for each other. In the end, the Qing family flew into a rage out of humiliation and chased Qing Yuru out. The Qing family is too much. Yuru, you can stay here for the time being. Don't worry, I'll definitely seek justice for you. Yuan Hang slowly coaxed Qing Yuru. I believe you. Qing Yuru snuggled into Yuan Hang's arms sweetly. Big brother Yuan, why did you bring me out so mysteriously? Gu Shengyin sat in the front passenger seat and turned her head to look at Yuan Su. Today, Yuan Su took off his suit and changed into casual clothes. It made people realize that he was only a young man in his 20s. I'll bring you to a good place. Yuan Su smiled mysteriously. After about half an hour, just as Gu Shengyin was about to fall asleep, she heard Yuan Su say, "We're here." Gu Shengyin got out of the car. Her eyes were instantly attracted by the beautiful scenery in front of her. Large patches of unknown flowers bloomed around her. It made her feel as if she was in another world. This is a private hot spring villa. It belongs to a foreign friend of mine. We never receive outsiders. Seeing the admiration in Gu Shengyin's eyes, Yuan Su was very happy. Welcome, lovely girl. As soon as Gu Shengyin entered the door, she was embraced by a warm embrace. Yuan Su pulled him away with a dark face. Richard, don't mess around. The handsome foreign man winked at Qing Shiji mischievously. Hey, Su said he was going to bring a lovely girl, and I guessed it must be you. You're as pretty as a Barbie doll. What's your name? Yuan Su pulled Gu Shengyin's hand and walked inside, ignoring the guy named Richard. Hey, Su, you can't just ignore the bridge after crossing the river. I did it especially for you. Yuan Su slammed the sliding door shut behind him, leaving Richard's hopping voice behind him. Ignore him. He's always been noisy, Yuan Su said to Gu Shengyin. The hot spring here is superb. You can slowly enjoy it. The things you need are clean and sterilized. You can use them without worry. I'll be next door. You can call me if you need anything. Yuan Su told Gu Shengyin. Seeing Gu Shengyin nodding her head, Yuan Su walked out with a little regret. Hey, Su, such a beautiful girl is soaking in the hot spring. You actually came here to hang out with a strong man like me. You really don't know how to be romantic. Richard gave Yuan Su a look of disdain, but then he said very proudly, did I make great progress in Chinese? Yuan Su naturally ignored the last sentence. He glanced at Richard and said, Cici is not an adult yet. Do I look like a beast? Richard looked at Yuan Su in horror. I didn't expect you to be such a person. You actually laid your hands on an underage child. God, this world is so scary. Yuan Su ignored his friend's habitual convulsions. She will be my future wife, my only partner. Richard's expression turned serious. Are you serious, Su? Yuan Su smiled and said, Of course. Richard snapped his fingers. Then I wish you both happiness. That's for sure. Yuan Su smiled confidently. Chapter 52. Gu Shengyin hadn't had such a comfortable bath for a long time. She went out in a bathrobe. Yuan Su was setting lunch. He saw her and said with a smile, just in time. I was just about to call you. You must try Richard's cooking. His pasta is the best. Richard immediately winked at Gu Shengyin proudly. Gu Shengyin rolled a little with a fork and put it into her mouth. How is it? Is it delicious? Richard looked at Gu Shengyin with bright eyes. It's delicious. Gu Shengyin gave Richard a thumbs up. Richard immediately smiled. I really like you, Cici. After lunch, Richard went somewhere. Before leaving, he winked at Yuan Su, hinting that Yuan Su should seize the opportunity. Gu Shengyin and Yuan Su lay under a flower tree and basked in the sun. Why are you so assured to follow me out? Aren't you afraid that I will sell you? Yuan Su joked. Gu Shengyin smiled at him. I know you won't. Yuan Su felt strange. You trust me so much? Gu Xingyi nodded. I trust you. Yuan Su suddenly stopped talking. There was an inexplicable feeling in his heart. It was a little sour, a little bitter, a little bloated, but it was very comfortable. He knew that this was called being moved. The little girl he liked trusted him so wholeheartedly. In fact, he really misunderstood Gu Xingyin. There were two reasons why Gu Xingyin trusted him so much. First, Gu Xingyin was a little confused because of the lotus smell on him and Jiyu. Second, with the system in hand, Gu Xingyin was not afraid that someone would do something bad to her. Gu Xingyin suddenly stood up and stood in front of Yuan Su. Brother Yuan, don't move. Yuan Su was puzzled. What's wrong? Gu Xingyin smiled slyly. Close your eyes and don't move. Yuan Su was a little confused, but he still obediently closed his eyes. Gotcha! Yuan Su opened his eyes and saw Gu Xingyin putting away her phone with a satisfied smile. There's a flower on your face, sleeping beauty. Gu Xingyin teased with a smile, planning to run away before Yuan Su could react. However, the hem of the bathrobe was too long, and she accidentally stepped on it. Aya! Gu Xingyin grabbed onto something beside her out of habit, but she couldn't stop herself from falling to the ground. The floor was covered with a thick carpet. Gu Xingyin did not feel any pain, but something seemed to be wrong. Gu Xingyin stared blankly at the white bathrobe in her hands. Her eyes followed the direction of Gu Xingyin's gaze. This looks like someone's bathrobe? Gu Xingyin secretly swallowed her saliva and looked in the direction of the man. The first thing she saw was a man's body full of strength. Firm 8-pack abs lined up neatly on the man's lower abdomen. They were not exaggerated muscles like those in the gym. The muscles on Yuan Su's body were not exaggerated, but no one doubted the strength contained in those smooth lines. Further up, Gu Xingyin's eyes were still. On the man's left shoulder, near his shoulder socket, a lotus flower was quietly blooming there. Gu Xingyin suddenly felt her eyes warm. She felt that her heart, which had been wandering for so long, finally had a place to settle down. Until a pair of strong hands pulled her up from the ground. Gu Xingyin looked at Yuan Su's face, which was completely different from his face in her previous life. Are you satisfied with what you see? Yuan Su looked at the little woman who seemed to be in a daze and asked in a hoarse voice. Chapter 53. Gu Xingyin hadn't recovered from the fact that Yuan Su was really Jiyu. Yuan Su looked at the little girl staring at him blankly and felt that he couldn't hold it in anymore. Gu Xingyin's lips felt warm. When the two of them left the hot spring villa, Richard gave Yuan Su a thumbs up behind Gu Xingyin's back. Looking at the little girl's blushing face and affectionate eyes, Richard was sure that Yuan Su must have made a move when they were alone. Looking at the situation, the result seemed to be good. Richard touched his chin. Yuan Su ignored his old friend's gaze. After saying goodbye to him, he leaned over to help Gu Xingyin fasten her seatbelt and drove her back to Hua City. Soon, they arrived at the Qing family's mansion. Gu Xingyin was about to get out of the car, but Yuan Su stopped her. Did you forget something? Yuan Su looked at Gu Xingyin seriously. Gu Xingyin blinked and blinked again. All right, she accepted her fate. She leaned over and kissed the man's face. Yuan Su returned her kiss and let her out of the car. This person was really... After Gu Xingyin got out of the car, she secretly ridiculed a certain someone for being indecent. Her hand involuntarily touched the place where she was kissed and a sweet smile appeared on her face. Before Gu Xingyin could figure out how to report to her parents about her relationship with Yuan Su, the Yuan family came. Brother Cheng, it's our second son who has let Cece down. Father Yuan looked sincerely at Cheng Jinxing and his wife who didn't look too good. They were good friends who grew up together when they were young and their relationship had been good all these years. Otherwise, they wouldn't have thought of becoming in-laws. We've already taught Yuan Hang a lesson. Don't worry, Yuan Hang won't do it again. Mother Yuan said. Father Cheng said coldly, we can't give him a second chance. Brother Yuan, let's call off the marriage agreement between the two families. The Yuan couple looked at each other and thought that the Cheng family really meant it. Don't be like that, Brother Cheng. I know Yuan Hang is insensible, but I have another kid, right? What do you think of our Yuan Su? Mother Yuan received her son's gaze and pulled herself together to ask Father Cheng. What's the meaning of this? Before Mr. Cheng could say anything, Mrs. Cheng flared up. It's not like our Cici can't get married. What do you mean by the older brother can't do it? Who do you think our Cici is? Yuan Su knew that things were bad. Mrs. Cheng must have misunderstood his mother. Mother Yuan was also annoyed that she hadn't thought about what she had just said. Thinking about it carefully, what she had just said was indeed a bit inappropriate. Yuan Su looked at Mr. and Mrs. Cheng sincerely. I like Cici, not because she's the daughter of the Cheng family, but also because I feel guilty and want to make it up to her. Uncle and Auntie should know what kind of person Yuan Su, If I didn't like Cici, I wouldn't have come here with my parents today. I hope Uncle and Auntie can give me a chance to take care of Cici. Mr. and Mrs. Chung looked at each other. Since when did Yuan Su have such deep feelings for their daughter? Mrs. Ching hesitated. You and our Cici, Yuan Su's expression didn't change. I fell in love with Cici at first sight. I'm willing to take care of her for the rest of my life. Mrs. Ching was a little moved. Yuan Su's character and ability were indisputable. She hadn't heard of any scandals about him. He was indeed a good candidate for a husband. Chapter 54. The previous marriage agreement between the Yuan family and the Cheng family is cancelled. Mr. Cheng said. As for you wanting to pursue our Cici, Mr. Cheng saw that Yuan Su's eyes lit up because of his words. I won't interfere in the affairs of you young people. Yuan Su's heart calmed down. Mr. Cheng's words meant that he would not stop him from being together with Cici. Gu Xingyin was not interested in business. She accepted Mr. De's invitation and joined an organization that was said to be the Chinese Classical Culture and Art Association. In the entire organization, except for her, the youngest person was already white-haired. When she first went there, Gu Xingyin was questioned by others. However, after she painted a landscape painting, no one dared to question her anymore. After pursuing Gu Xingyin for a year, Yuan Su finally won the approval of the Cheng family. The two of them held a grand engagement ceremony in the biggest hotel in Hua City. Gu Xingyin was living a carefree life now. She flew abroad several times a year to attend international cultural exchange meetings. She was very free on normal days. Yuan Su pampered her and had a look that said, whatever Cici does is right. Even the Cheng couple who loved their daughter as much as their life could not stand her behavior. They said that it was fortunate that they were in today's society. If they were in ancient times, Cici would be a femme fatale. Gu Xingyin could only retort in his heart, of course not. Even in ancient times, Jiyu was a virtuous and wise ruler. I'm not a femme fatale. I'm a virtuous queen, okay? Hello, I'm looking for Mr. Yuan. Gu Xingyin carried a shopping bag to the front desk of the Yuan group. Today was Mrs. Yuan's birthday. She promised Mrs. Yuan that she would accompany her to the Yuan family's main house for dinner after Yuan Su got off work. The front desk was a very beautiful lady. However, Gu Xingyin did not look familiar. She should not have seen her before. Madam, do you have an appointment? The lady at the front desk smiled brightly. Gu Xingyin shook her head. You can tell your general manager's secretary that Qing Shiji is here. She knows. A trace of impatience flashed across the pretty receptionist's eyes. The Yuan Corporation was a big business and there were many people who came here to ask for help. She had only been working here for a few days, and she had seen many people looking for an excuse to get close to the general manager. I'm sorry, madam. If you don't have an appointment, I can't inform you. That kind of person was not someone she could casually come into contact with. Gu Xingyin naturally saw the disapproval in the receptionist's eyes. She sighed inwardly and did not intend to make things difficult for her. She turned and walked to the rest area, took out her mobile phone and called Yuan Su. I'm downstairs at your company? Yes, the newcomer doesn't know me. Goodbye. Gu Xingyin hung up the phone and waited for Yuan Su to send someone to pick her up. Miss Cheng. Gu Xingyin looked up. It was a director of the Yuan Corporation. Mr. Zhang. Gu Xingyin stood up and shook hands with him. Miss Cheng, why don't you go up? Director Zhang asked curiously. The receptionist saw that the director, who was usually high and mighty, was kind to the strange woman and even greeted her personally. She knew that things were not going well. At this moment, she was afraid that Gu Shengyin would take the opportunity to complain about her. Then, the position she had fought so hard for might be gone. Gu Shengyin just smiled and said, "I'm a little tired. I plan to rest for a while before going up." Director Zhang smiled understandingly. He still had something to do, so he said goodbye and left. The receptionist was about to apologize to Gu Shengyin when she saw a man walking toward Gu Shengyin. Chapter 55. Yuan Su strode over to Gu Shengyin and took the things in her hands. "Come to my office for a while. When I'm done with my work, we'll go home together." Yuan Su held Gu Shengyin's hand and went to the front desk. "Miss Cheng is my fiancée and my future wife. If you see her in the future, just let her in." The lady at the front desk nodded hurriedly. She only heaved a sigh of relief when the two entered the elevator. At this time, another colleague who had left for a while came back. The lady at the front desk quickly told her what had happened. "You actually stopped Miss Cheng?" The colleague's eyes widened. "God, you don't know that the general manager and Miss Cheng are famous for their good relationship. Luckily, Miss Cheng has a good temper. If it were someone who was calculative, you wouldn't even have a place to cry." The lady at the front desk noted this in her heart. From then on, she treated people more carefully and made some achievements in her work. Gu Shengyin's life was good, but Cheng Yiru was not so comfortable. After being chased out of the Cheng family, Cheng Yiru had no source of income. Although she had some savings, she couldn't resist her extravagant habit. Soon, Cheng Yiru used up all her money. She tried to go out and find a job, but she had been raised as the eldest daughter of the Cheng family. How could Cheng Yiru tolerate the strife in the workplace? Originally, Yuan Hang often came to see her and provided her with living expenses. But after Yuan Hang's behavior was discovered by the Yuan family, they forcibly restricted his actions and even cut off his source of income. Cheng Yiru began to live a tight life. She finally couldn't resist and started to meet some rich people in society. "Pa!" Yuan Su threw the things in his hands in front of Yuan Hang. "Take a look for yourself. This is the Cheng Yiru you must marry." The main character in the photos was Cheng Yiru. The difference was that the men who appeared next to her were all unfamiliar faces. And they were clearly not the same person. Cheng Yiru was intimate with those people in the photos. It was obvious what their relationship was. Yuan Hang was furious, but he still insisted. "Impossible. You can't be this kind of woman." Yuan Su was both annoyed and amused by his brother's stubbornness. He pulled him up and said, "Go and see for yourself." Yuan Su drove to the small apartment that Yuan Hang and Cheng Yiru had bought. "Take a good look at the woman you love when you're not around." The two of them did not have to wait for long. Soon, they saw Cheng Yiru and a man who looked to be in his 30s walking out of the door hand in hand. The two of them got into the car. The moment the car window was closed, Yuan Hang clearly saw the two of them kissing. Yuan Su looked at his younger brother and saw that his chest was heaving up and down, and his eyes were red. It was obvious that he had suffered a great blow. He didn't say anything. He knew that it was best for him to calm down. "Are you coming home with me, or?" Yuan Hang closed his eyes. "Just send me back, big brother." He was afraid that he would not be able to control himself and kill that woman. After Yuan Hang returned home, he locked himself in his room for 3 days. On the 4th day, he drove out alone. Mother Yuan was a little worried and was about to ask someone to follow him, but Yuan Su stopped her. "He's already so old. Mom, you should trust him. He will take care of his own matters." At night, Yuan Hang came home. He looked a little dispirited, but there was a hint of relief in his eyes. Yuan Su knew that Yuan Hang had let go. Chapter 56. Gu Shengyin asked the system, "Now that Cheng Yiru has been kicked out of the Cheng family and cut ties with Yuan Hang, is my mission in this world almost complete?" The system said, "Not yet. The mission progress bar shows that there's still a lot to go. I suspect that Cheng Yiru won't let it go so easily. You have to be careful during this time." Gu Shengyin nodded. According to the original plot, Cheng Yiru hated the Cheng family and Cheng Shiji to the bone. She probably hadn't given up yet. She contacted her elder brother, Cheng Buishuan, and told him her thoughts. Cheng Buishuan was obviously a little surprised. He didn't believe that Cheng Yiru was such a person. Gu Shengyin said coquettishly, "It's better to be safe than sorry. Brother, you have to be careful during this time. I've been feeling uneasy recently. I'm afraid that something bad will happen." Cheng Buishuan nodded and said that he would be careful. Gu Shengyin called Yuan Su again. Yuan Su didn't object. To Gu Shengyin's surprise, the following days were peaceful. Cheng Yiru completely disappeared from the Cheng family's sight, as if she had really left. However, Gu Shengyin's mind didn't relax because of this. She had a faint premonition that Cheng Yiru was brewing a big conspiracy in her heart. Until that day, Gu Shengyin received a call from her elder brother, Cheng Buishuan. "Cici, you're right. Our cooperation plan with Dingsheng International has been leaked." There was still a trace of disbelief in his voice. Gu Shengyin wasn't interested in the business world, but she often saw news about this project on TV. The cooperation between Dingsheng International and the Cheng Group could be considered a strong combination in the field of cutting-edge technology. The Cheng Group had invested almost 80% of the group's working capital in this project. At this time, the project was leaked. In the original plot, it was also this time that the cooperation project with Dingsheng International was leaked by the Cheng Corporation. Not only did the Cheng Corporation suffer heavy losses, but they were also sued by Dingsheng International. Both parties were involved in a lawsuit that lasted for several years. This incident also became an important point that dragged down the Cheng Corporation. "Big brother, are there any major problems?" Gu Shengyin's voice was relatively calm. She believed that with her caution after she reminded him, he would definitely have the corresponding protective measures. "Well, since I listened to your reminder last time, I've been keeping an eye on it. The one that was leaked is just the information that was invalidated before we changed to the heyday." Even so, Cheng Buishuan still felt a chill in his heart. The little sister that he had loved for 18 years? "Cici, it's better for you to come to the company. Since they want to cause problems for Cheng's group, I'll beat them at their own game. Let's see how many people in the company are still loyal to Cao Cao. It's time to clean up the company." Cheng Buishuan's voice was cold. Gu Shengyin gave his brother a thumbs up in his heart. She changed her clothes and drove out. Before she left, she called Yuan Su. Gu Shengyin looked at the black Buick in the rearview mirror and frowned deeply. Something was wrong. Not long after she left the house, the car had been following her. Gu Shengyin initially thought that it was just a coincidence. However, after she deliberately took several detours, the car was still steadily following behind her. This was abnormal. Gu Shengyin began to speed up. Thanks to the system, her driving skills were enough to be called cool. However, the driver behind her was not easy to deal with. The two cars set off a silent competition in the long traffic. Oh no. Gu Shengyin saw an off-road vehicle in front of her rushing towards her at an extremely abnormal speed. Chapter 57. It turned out that the real backup plan was here. She was just avoiding the pursuit from behind. It was too late to turn around now. Gu Shengyin silently called the system in her mind. "System, I'm counting on you." Bang. The airbag popped out instantly and Gu Shengyin lost consciousness. Cheng Buishuan held an emergency shareholders meeting and waited for a long time, but his sister did not come. His phone rang. Cheng Buishuan glanced at it and saw that it was Yuan Su. "Buishuan, is Cici there yet?" Yuan Su's low voice came through. Cheng Buishuan frowned. "Not yet." He looked at the watch on his wrist. Normally, Cici should have arrived at this time. Yuan Su hung up the phone and frowned deeply. Cici's phone was not answered. At this time, the TV screen was broadcasting an emergency news. Hua City time, 13:04, a car accident occurred under the North 2nd Ring Road viaduct. The car involved was a military off-road vehicle. The driver was suspected to be drunk driving. The other car involved was a red Ferrari. Yuan Su could not hear the rest of the words. His eyes were locked on the car on the screen. He was very familiar with the car. It was Cici's birthday gift 2 months ago. When Yuan Su arrived at the hospital, Gu Shengyin had already been sent to the emergency room. "How is she?" Yuan Su grabbed a nurse who was in a hurry. The nurse looked up impatiently. She was about to say something when she was frightened by the man's horrifying face. The man in front of her looked very calm, but his eyes were bloodshot. The surging madness in his eyes seemed to be about to go out of control. The nurse felt that the man was going to go crazy in the next second. She felt that her throat was a little dry. She swallowed her saliva and carefully worded, "The patient has just been sent to the emergency room. The current diagnosis is 4 broken ribs, a comminuted fracture of the right hand, and part of the sternum is broken. Whether the broken bones have pierced the thoracic cavity remains to be checked," the nurse said carefully. Seeing that the man with the scary aura did not move, she hurriedly left. Yuan Su stood there alone. The nurse's words echoed in his mind. 4 broken ribs, right hand comminuted fracture, sternum shattered. His CC was so weak and delicate. She should be held in the palm of someone's hand. How could the CC who should be loved and pampered endure this kind of pain? Yuan Su felt a dull pain in his heart. He hated himself for not being able to replace the person in the emergency room. At this time, the Cheng family also rushed over. "How is CC?" Mrs. Cheng asked. Yuan Su's voice was low and hoarse. "He's still in the emergency room. We'll have to wait for the doctor to come out." Mrs. Cheng leaned weakly against her husband and tried her best to cover her face with her handkerchief to stop herself from crying. Cheng Buishuan walked to Yuan Su's side and patted his friend's shoulder. "CC will be fine." He could see that this man was on the verge of collapse. Yuan Su looked at his friend. "Where's the driver? Did you find it?" Cheng Buishuan nodded. Yuan Su's voice was cold. "I don't believe this is a simple drunk driving accident. That person, find a way to make him talk." Cheng Buishuan's voice wasn't any calmer than Yuan Su's. "Don't worry. If this is man-made and I find out who did it, I'll definitely make her regret being born into this world." The lights in the emergency room were on for a few hours. "Doctor, how is the situation?" Yuan Su asked. The doctor looked at the faces in front of him that often appeared in the financial news. He also knew that the person lying in the emergency room at this moment was not simple. The patient is out of danger. His body is not particularly damaged, but the injury is too serious. I'm afraid that he won't be able to withstand too much force in the future. For a moment, everyone was silent. Chapter 58. When Gu Xingyin woke up, she felt pain all over her body. "System, didn't I ask you to help me?" She contacted the system. The system was silent for a moment. "You were hit by a military off-road vehicle at high speed. This injury is considered very light. I have tried my best to avoid leaving any sequelae on your body. If the injury is too light, you will be rejected by the rules of the world." Gu Xingyin was speechless. It was really tiring to have such a serious and dedicated system. "CC, are you awake?" Gu Xingyin heard a familiar voice as soon as she opened her eyes. Yuan Su's face appeared in her sight. His hair was slightly messy and his eyes were bloodshot. Obviously, he did not have a good rest these days. Yuan Su rang the bell to ask the doctor to come over. He asked nervously, "Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Gu Xingyin wanted to shake her head, but when she thought of Qing Shiji's character, tears quickly accumulated in her eyes and her small nose wrinkled. "Yuan Su, I'm in pain." Gu Xingyin's red eyes and crying in pain almost crushed Yuan Su's heart. He was in a hurry to comfort her, but he did not dare to touch her easily. He had to be clumsy like coaxing a child. "Sissy, be good. It won't hurt any more soon." The doctor came quickly. After checking Gu Xingyin, he was relieved that the patient was all right. According to this trend, she would soon recover. What followed was a long period of recuperation. Yuan Su directly changed his office location to the hospital. Every day, his secretary would bring important documents for him to review and sign. The rest of the time, he was taking care of Gu Xingyin. "I don't want to drink this soup," Gu Xingyin said coquettishly. These days, there were all kinds of bone soup every day. Gu Xingyin only felt that she was going to vomit whenever she smelled the bone soup. Yuan Su was very patient. "This is the last time. Don't drink this tomorrow." Gu Xingyin said, "It's the last time." Yuan Su looked at Gu Shengyin with a gentle expression as she reluctantly finished the entire bowl of soup. The left hand behind his back was covered in blisters. Everyone could see Yuan Su's care for Gu Shengyin. Every time the nurse in the hospital talked about Yuan Su, her face was full of longing. There aren't many handsome and rich men, but he treats his fiancée so well. I want a man like him too. The head nurse immediately poured a bucket of cold water. But his fiancée is also beautiful and rich. Stop dreaming. Have you checked the patient in room 20? Even Mrs. Chung secretly sighed with her husband. At first, I was worried that Yuan Su was too old for us to cherish. I was afraid that there would be a generation gap between the two of them and that they wouldn't be suitable for each other. But now that I see him like this, I'm relieved. What else is more important than a man putting you in the heart of his heart? Gu Shengyin once asked about her brother's company. Cheng Buxuan only told her to rest well and not to think too much. Don't worry. The Cheng Corporation is fine. What you need to do now is to take good care of yourself. Dad and Big Brother are in the company, so you don't have to worry. What about the culprit of this car accident? Gu Shengyin asked. She had a feeling that this was not an accident. Cheng Buxuan paused for a moment. I have already found the culprit. Don't worry, Big Brother will definitely seek justice for you. He didn't mention the culprit's information. After leaving the room, Cheng Buxuan looked at Yuan Su, who was waiting for him. Did that person say anything? Yuan Su asked. Cheng Buxuan nodded. It's Cheng Yiru. Chapter 59. Yuan Su's eyes seem to be laced with poison. Keep that woman alive. I must make her regret what she did today. Gu Shengyin only felt that Yuan Su seemed to be a little busy these 2 days. In the past, he used to accompany her in the ward all day long. Recently, he always disappeared after lunch and only came back after dinner. When she asked, he just said that the company was busy recently. Cici, Yuan Su's expression looked a little hesitant. What's wrong? Gu Shengyin asked with a smile after eating the fruit that Yuan Su had peeled. Yuan Su looked at Gu Shengyin's pure smile, closed his eyes and said harshly, the doctor said that your right hand may not be able to hold the paintbrush anymore. Yuan Su looked at him. When she heard this, her face suddenly turned pale. After a while, she smiled at him. Under those circumstances, I just couldn't paint anymore. I feel that the heavens were already very kind to me. Although she said so, Yuan Su clearly saw that Cici's left hand was holding the fruit so hard that the knuckles were white. Yuan Su felt a little sour in his eyes. He knew very well how much Cici liked to draw. She said so just to comfort herself. Yuan Su suppressed this heartache in the bottom of his heart. When dealing with a certain woman, his means were even more excessive. Ah! Cheng Yiru let out a scream. The bones of her right hand were crushed one by one. Yuan Su looked at her with red eyes as if he was looking at a dead person. What's wrong? Does it hurt? It doesn't feel good to have your fingers broken, right? His Cici was more painful than this. Cheng Yiru had been tortured during this period of time. She was really afraid of Yuan Su, the devil. She also regretted countless times that she provoked Cheng Shiji and Yuan Su. I was wrong, I was really wrong. Cheng Yiru's tears and snot flowed. She repented over and over again. I apologized to Cici. I let her down. I deserve to die. You don't deserve to call her Cici, and you don't deserve to apologize to her. Yuan Su looked at her indifferently. People like you don't deserve to appear in front of Cici and dirty her eyes. Treat her well. Yuan Su ordered the people around him and left without looking back. He took a shower and changed into a new set of clothes. After making sure that there was nothing wrong with his body, he went to the hospital. Yuan Su stared at the woman sleeping soundly on the bed for a long time. He only felt that looking at her like this, the tyranny in his heart slowly calmed down, leaving only peace. Cici, he said her name softly with incomparable longing and kissed her forehead with great care. After lying in bed for 3 months, Gu Shengyin was finally allowed to leave the hospital. At this moment, she finally understood the feeling of a bird that had just been released from its cage. Yuan Su bought a bouquet of flowers early and stood there to pick her up. After the car drove for a while, Gu Shengyin found that something was wrong. This is not the way home. Gu Shengyin was puzzled. This road did not lead to the Chung family or the Yuan family. Yuan Su's expression did not change. Don't go home first. There are more important things to do. Before Gu Shengyin could figure out what more important things than going home was, Yuan Su stopped the car. Then he took Gu Shengyin's hand and led her to a place. Gu Shengyin opened her mouth wide and looked at the bright words, General Administration of Marriage Registration. Gu Shengyin was obviously shocked. Yuan Su looked at her softly. Cici, let's get married. Chapter 60. The marriage between Cheng's group and Yuan's group had become the hottest topic in Hua City recently. Of course, even if the pervasive news media had gotten the news early, the confidentiality measures of the two families were very strict. Until the wedding was held, no media had successfully infiltrated the scene. Yuan Su and Cheng Shiji exchanged rings with each other under everyone's witness. Cici, I'm so happy. I've finally waited for this day. The two touched their foreheads, and Yuan Su whispered to Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin blinked. Dear, I'm also very happy. Yuan Hang looked at this pair of incomparably well-matched newlyweds. Everyone could see the affection and happiness flowing between them. He suddenly felt a little sour in his heart. Once, he really liked a woman so much that he could fight against his family for her. He just wanted to marry her, but what happened in the end? Yuan Hang thought in a trance. Suddenly, he found that Cheng Iru's face was blurred in his memory. Forget it, Yuan Hang thought. He would go on another path in the future. He would accept the family's arrangement and marry a woman who was well-matched in appearance and family background. Then, he would become a qualified husband and a qualified father. Hua City International Airport. As soon as Gu Shengyin got off the plane, she saw the man who had been waiting by the side. Yuan Su reached out and held her fingers. He was a little dissatisfied. Why are you so cold? As he spoke, he wrapped the scarf around Gu Shengyin's neck and stole a kiss at the corner of her mouth. Gu Shengyin glared at him, but the smile at the corner of her mouth couldn't be stopped. Click! When the two of them didn't notice, a photo was secretly taken. So, the next day, Gu Shengyin woke up from the bed and was complaining about a man who didn't know how to control himself when she received a call from her mother. Cici, I'm relieved to see that your relationship is still so good after so many years. This was the voice of Cheng Shiji's mother. Cici, although I know that you and brother-in-law are very loving, it's not right to abuse the single person when you come back this time. This was her second brother, Cheng Qishuan, who was still single in his 30s. Cheng Qishuan had the romantic factor of an artist. He had a lot of female companions around him, but he had never stopped for anyone. Little auntie, you're so shy. This was the little princess of Big Brother's family, Cheng Lingxi. Gu Shengyin was wondering what had happened. When she walked into the hall, she heard the news broadcast on the television. The photo of her and Yuan Su kissing appeared in the photo. Gu Shengyin blushed. Apparently, the two of them had been photographed at the airport yesterday. No wonder his family said that. She called Yuan Su and told him about it. Yuan Su said calmly, I kissed my wife. What's wrong with that? Is that not allowed? Gu Shengyin was speechless. He shook his head and thought about it carefully. What was he thinking about? Oh my God, the relationship between the Yuan Group's CEO and that woman is so good. In a shopping mall, several shopping assistants took advantage of the fact that no one was there to gossip. The news said that they had been married for 10 years. Look, they picked her up at the airport, gave her a scarf, and kissed passionately. It's even more romantic than an idol drama. A warehouse worker passed by with a few big boxes, and several people quickly moved aside. She had 2 broken fingers on each of her hands. Cheng Ru listened to those people talking about how happy the two of them were, but she didn't stop working. There were still more than a dozen boxes. She could only get off work after she finished unloading them. She looked up at the LCD TV on the wall. On the screen, a man and a woman were hugging each other affectionately. When they looked at each other, the affection in their eyes was undisguised. It felt like a lifetime ago. Chapter 61. Gu Shengyin opened her eyes again and found herself back in the pure white space. She stretched out her hand. It was white, soft, and full of vitality. It was not the pale and wrinkled hand she had in the previous world. Cheng Shiji had no regrets in her life. Even at the end of her life, she left in the arms of the person she loved the most. Thinking of Yuan Su, Gu Shengyin's mouth unconsciously raised into a smile. System, can you tell me now who Yuan Su is? Gu Shengyin asked. She was not stupid. Someone who could be reincarnated in a different world with her could not be an ordinary person. However, the omniscient system was stuck this time. Unable to find any information about the target Yuan Su, unable to find any information about the target Jiyu, Gu Shengyin was really surprised this time. She knew very well that the system would not lie. If it did not want to tell her, it would at most say, "Sorry, the host does not have enough authority to tell you." If the system said that it could not find anything, it meant that it really did not know what kind of existence her lover was. Gu Shengyin was also quite curious. What kind of identity could a person who could not be detected by the system? The system said, "Host, do you want to rest for a while or go to the next mission world?" Gu Shengyin chose to go on with the mission without hesitation. She could not wait to see her lover. The mission world this time was a Western fantasy world. There were ordinary people, swordsmen, magicians, and magical beasts led by giant dragons. The female protagonist of this world was the first Duke of the Carter Empire in this world. As the heir of the White Rose Duke Mansion, Veronica Roman was a natural swordswoman. When she was born and baptized, she was tested by the Archbishop at that time to have a godlike aptitude and was personally accepted as a goddaughter. Veronica's life was also quite glorious. She carried the glory of the White Rose family all her life. After inheriting the title of Duke, she fought for the Carter Empire all her life. Under her efforts, the reputation of the White Rose family was almost on par with the royal family. She was also praised by historians as one of the greatest women of the Carter dynasty. Such a legendary figure who had left his name in the annals of history had been obliterated by a useless cannon fodder from a small family in a remote city. Eve Heather was just a fisherman's daughter. When she was born, her mother died in childbirth because of her. Because of this, her father especially hated this ominous daughter and beat and scolded her since she was young. Finally, when Eve was 8 years old, she pushed her drunk father into the river. Then he packed up his belongings and left the small mountain village. In the process of escaping, Eve picked up the treasure that changed her life, the necklace that sealed the Demon King. After being sealed in the necklace for countless years, the Demon King had finally escaped. At that time, he was already extremely weak and had no choice but to sign a contract with Eve. The Demon King, who had lived for tens of thousands of years, had a rich store of knowledge and knew how to improve Eve's trash aptitude to an excellent level. As compensation, Eve had to provide the Demon King with the best medicine for his recovery, the souls of living people. The higher the aptitude of the mage or swordsman, the more benefits the Demon King could obtain from absorbing their soul. The female lead, Veronica, was one of the Demon King's biggest targets. She was said to have the potential to be a god. Chapter 62. Gu Shengyin was lying on a bench in the White Rose Garden, receiving the memories transmitted by the system. So, my first task is to stay alive? The previous worlds were relatively gentle, but she did not expect this world to be so cruel. The system's calm voice sounded, "Yes, the host. The system has detected that your body is 13 years old, and the cannon fodder Eve is 10 years old. At this time, she has already obtained the necklace that sealed the Demon King, and is on her way to the king's city." Gu Shengyin was silent for a moment, then asked, "System, if I were to fight the Demon King now, what are the chances of me defeating him?" The system answered honestly, "None." Gu Shengyin, she was secretly thinking, should she tell her godfather, the Archbishop, that Eve was carrying the necklace that sealed the Demon King? The system poured cold water on her without mercy. "I don't recommend the host to do this. The original body has never left the king's city, so you can't explain how you know this. If the host really does this, It is very likely that you and Eve will be eliminated as heretics. Gu Shengyin could only give up this tempting idea. Your Highness, the second prince is here to see you. A maid came forward, waking Gu Shengyin from her meditation. Gu Shengyin elegantly got up, nodded to the maid, and walked towards the reception hall. Veronica. From afar, a young man's voice called out to her. Veronica walked over unhurriedly and gave the person a standard aristocratic salute. Your Highness the second prince. The young man's beautiful eyebrows suddenly wrinkled. I've told you many times, Veronica, there is no need to be so polite in front of me. Gu Shengyin's expression did not change. Your Highness, etiquette cannot be ignored. Liveman was helpless. All right, Veronica, your father the Duke has taught you too old-fashioned. Gu Shengyin's expression became serious. Your Highness, please do not criticize my elders. Liveman looked at the girl in front of him. The 13-year-old girl was already very tall, and her figure was beginning to show the embryonic form of a woman. The heir of the White Rose family had golden curly hair that was as bright as the sun. Her pure eyes were like the purest green gems. Her milk-white skin was inherited from her mother, the Duchess of White Rose. She also had delicate lips that were like flower petals. It was a pleasure to be able to hear his name from her mouth. The Pearl of the Empire. Liveman did not know how many times he had heard the nobles secretly talk about the heir of the Duke. She was as dazzling and charming as her family emblem, the White Rose. Unfortunately, Liveman looked at Veronica's serious and expressionless face and sighed secretly. The Duke of White Rose was known for his strictness in the empire. He had taught his only daughter to be this way, old-fashioned, well-mannered, and her every move was as standard as what was written in the textbooks. Your Highness the Prince, what do you want? His Highness the Prince? Liveman came back to his senses and remembered the purpose of his visit. My mother's purebred Siamese cat gave birth to 3 children, and I brought you one. Do you like it? Liveman held up a delicate small basket as if he was presenting a treasure. Lifting the cloth on the small basket, Gu Shengyin saw the creature inside. Chapter 63. A little guy, not even the size of a palm, was lying on the soft cushion in the basket. His newborn eyes had not yet opened, and only his nose moved from time to time. Perhaps he was not used to the sudden light, and his body was slightly curled up. Of course she liked it. Gu Shengyin loved this kind of furry thing in her past life. She almost couldn't help but reach out to touch it. But she remembered Veronica's character and suppressed the urge. She just couldn't help but look at the kitten in the basket. Little did she know that in the eyes of the second prince, she was much cuter than the kitten in the basket. The beautiful little girl clearly liked the kitten so much that her eyes were almost glued to it, but she kept a straight face and pretended to be serious and unconcerned. In the end, she was still a child. The second prince only felt his index finger itch. He really wanted to pinch her face. The second prince put his finger back into his sleeve and handed the basket to Gu Shengyin. Here, take good care of her. This prince will check on her often. In a wild forest thousands of miles away from the king's city, a thin figure was trekking with difficulty. Your Excellency, why are we in such a hurry to go to the king's city? The figure asked in a clear voice. This person was Eve Heather. There was no sound coming from the ring, but Eve Heather didn't find it strange. She held the necklace in front of her chest with her empty left hand. The strange soul lived in the necklace around her neck. 2 months ago, when she picked up this necklace, it was just a simple girl who liked beautiful things and kept it. Until she saw the shadow in the necklace, or rather, the soul. The soul's offer was very tempting. As long as she helped him find enough souls, he would tell her how to improve her aptitude. Eve Heather agreed on the spot, even though what the soul wanted her to do was against God's will. But what did it matter? When she was abused and beaten by her father, she had prayed countless times to God to save her, but he didn't. Until she couldn't take it anymore and pushed the man into the river. She was really scared at that time. She was afraid that God would punish her for the crime of killing her own family. But nothing happened. From then on, she knew that the so-called God did not exist at all. In other words, the high and mighty gods did not care about the life and death of mortals like them. Therefore, When she knew that she had a chance to become stronger, she agreed to the soul's request without hesitation. However, there seems to be something wrong with that person recently. Eve Heather thought to herself. In the past, whenever His Excellency appeared, she would always have the illusion of being stared at by a venomous snake. But since last month, this feeling had disappeared. His Excellency's words were noticeably less, and he no longer asked her to find the souls of living people for him. His only request was to get to the royal city as soon as possible. Eve Heather always felt that His Excellency had become much easier to get along with. If it was in the past, she would never have dared to ask any questions. Don't think too much and don't ask too many questions. Whatever you want, I will naturally give it to you when the time comes. A cold voice appeared in her mind. It was that person. Eve Heather was startled. She lowered her head and replied respectfully, "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."